Hello, and welcome to Life is a Piano, where I have conversations with other pianists about our craft and experiences as keyboard players. If you enjoyed my conversation today with Grayson Nye, a wonderful pianist from Kalamazoo, Michigan, you can support podcasts like these by going to patreon.com/Dutcher Snedeker. There you'll find access to other podcasts, early access to content, private streams, and the ability to use my skills and services as an instructor, consultant, and studio musician. So thanks again for tuning in. And remember, you can also listen to this podcast on all platforms thanks to Anchor.fm, like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So thanks again, and enjoy today's episode of Life is a Piano with Grayson Nye. Set up. I don't really have like an intro other than just saying like this is the podcast, but
I was telling a friend about this, and the song "Life Is a Highway" by Rascal Flatts. She started singing that, but replaced highway with piano.
Life is a piano.
and instead of "I want to drive it all night long," it's "I want to play it all night long." So you could use that.
Yeah,
you might have some copyright infringement there, but you know.
Yeah, I could find like this is like sort of Rascal Flatts.
I also recently found out that is not a Rascal Flatts song. It's by some other country singer, and then Rascal Flatts just made it famous.
Oh,
it's actually a cover.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. The more you know.
How am I supposed to enjoy the band now that I know they're a friend?
Oh man.
But yeah, maybe this just let it. We'll let that be the start of the. We have it more casual. So thanks for being the first guest of.
Yeah. I'm honored to be the first one. Wow.
Yeah, first one. Finally getting the schedule made.
Mm-hmm.
But for those who might not know who you are, other than the fact that you do play piano, because that's what this podcast is focused on, maybe just like a quick overview of like who you are, what you do, what's going on, 2020 maybe.
All right. Well, my name is Grayson Nye. I am a pianist. I live in the Kalamazoo area. I'm originally from the Chicago suburbs, grew up there, and then I came to Michigan to get my bachelor's degree in jazz studies at WMU, and then I stayed there, did my master's, also in jazz studies. And now I'm kind of right now I'm in the band Last Gasp Collective and the new band Fake Baseball. Last Gasp is sort of an R&B hip hop collective. Fake Baseball is more of a like a postmodern pop, eclectic. I don't know. It's very hard to put a name on that genre, but yeah, it's sort of a pop-ish group with some twists and turns, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
well, and Fake Baseball is like, it's you, Jared or Saxwatch, and Maggie and Adam Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis from the Go Rounds. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, seeing that combination of people is like, everyone's kind of got their own like, oh, Go Rounds kind of do this thing, and Maggie's kind of does this thing and is an engineer, and like Saxwatch will, he'll burst in with his saxophone, or he'll jump on a kit, or kind of just does whatever.
Yeah.
Feeling.
Exactly, and kind of on the album, he plays saxophone, he plays guitar, he plays drums, Adam also plays like bass, drums, guitar, and sings. Maggie plays guitar and sings, and I'm kind of just sticking to keyboards, but I also do some like, synth based stuff. And so we're all kind of all over the place.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like too, people forget that it's not an inherent thing for like, oh, you learned piano as a child, you must know synthesizers. Like that's like a whole other category of instrument.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, physically it's the same thing, but it's not at all in any other way.
Yeah, and it has like a weird like assumption. Like I feel like every person who's looking for a gigging keyboard player, they think like, oh, you must have, you got your organ sound, you got your whirly, you got like your Rhodes, and it's like, I have this keyboard. I don't necessarily have all of those things figured out yet, and those are different instruments. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because obviously growing up, I just played piano. I mean, we had a keyboard at home too, but it was just like a kind of an old Casio type thing. So it was just, I wouldn't gig with that keyboard. But when I got to, to college and stuff, and I bought that Rhodes from Kellen, probably my sophomore years of my undergrad. And it was very interesting because it is a different instrument, and you can't play the same things on it. Like, the voicings are different, just the timbre of it is so different. So the low register is going to have a completely different sound. And I mean, I love I want to call that my main instrument now, but I also don't want to lug that to a gig, cause it's just so heavy, but
yeah, and even like that's, one reason I'm glad to be working at Third Coast Recording Company, because it gives me it gives me work, but at the same time I'm having to play these instruments that I didn't grow up learning. Like yesterday I tracked like Wurlitzer, Rhodes, piano, and organ. And it was kind of like bam, 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 bam. There wasn't any like, okay, let's sit down. It was like I listened to the song. I would play along with the song maybe once or twice, and then I'd have some takes. So there wasn't any time to be like, get hung up on the semantics of each instrument. It was kind of like, oh, we want a darker sound, a little bit warmer. Okay, move drawbars. This sounds darker and warmer.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't know how they all work yet, but
right. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because before we started recording, I was telling you about how I went to Grand Rapids because Rufus bought an organ and I helped him move it. But so he's been letting me kind of practice on it. And I've played like organ patches on my keyboard, and like there's a little bit of like drawbar manipulation that I can do, but it's obviously a keyboard and not the real thing. And so I've never actually like sat down and like actually shed organ. And I teach at the Jazz and Creative Institute, and I'm leading this group. It's like an organ quartet. And so we had to like, because of COVID and everything, instead of like meeting, we did like a remote recording thing. And so I had to like practice organ, and, it's first of all, finding the right sound. That's its own thing. And then figuring out the foot pedals was just like, that will take me a lifetime to learn. And then there's like, the jazz organ thing and like the gospel organ thing are two very different things, cause like with the jazz organ thing, you kind of like, you don't really play the foot pedals. You just kind of use them to like amplify the walking bass thing that you're doing in your left hand. And so it's a whole, piano and Rhodes are two different things, but piano and like those are the furthest ends of the keyboard spectrum for me. So
yeah, and you were saying like, cause that's one thing I've always been curious about with the foot pedals. Because, I see people who are like their feet, they're just so like adept and they move around. And then sometimes it's like, they're kind of sitting on one or two notes and they're kind of just pumping. And I don't really know, like, is that I don't really know the function of them, I guess, or like I assumed one thing about the function and there's more to it than just like it's another note but for your foot.
Yeah, so the way, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on this, but what Rufus told me is so if you can find the right setting, where it's also tricky because you have to find the right note on the organ, like foot pedals, and it's different for every organ, and then you have to move the drawbars in the right, like the particular way, so that when you lightly tap a specific foot pedal, you're not really getting a pitch, you're just sort of getting a low rumble. And so then basically when you're walking a bass line with your left hand, you know, you're sort of playing the foot with your fingers, well, like in addition to playing with your fingers. And so it just kind of gives the bass line an extra little like percussive oomph, kind of as if like a, you know, like the pulling effect that you hear from bass players. It's sort of that. But
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because that's actually the one thing that they might have it somewhere in storage, but both organs at Third Coast don't have foot pedals because most of the tracking they tend to just like, okay, we'll have left hand bass, and I think it just helps it because there's no like there's sometimes stations of like, okay, the organ's gonna kind of be here, but then other times it's like, okay, with a certain size group we got to move, you know, the organ into one spot and put the Leslie in an ISO room or like in the other studio, and so nothing stays in one spot. And I think if it did, they might just like reattach the foot pedals. But
yeah, that's you, man. Moving organs is not fun. So I don't envy whoever has to do that.
yeah, it's, you know, sometimes I help when I'm in the, like I walk through, it's like, hey, could you help move it? It's like, well, I can't say no. And it's, yeah, especially because like the owner is so hands-on too. He, like Bill Chrysler, he's very like, you know, he's, you know, I don't even know like how old he is, but like he's just a road warrior from like all his years of touring. So he's used to like lifting and moving, and just like he's just got like touring physique where he can just be like, I'm 40 years older than you all, and I can just, you know, pick up one end of an organ to put onto a wheeled platform, and then pick up the other end and put it on the wheel and push it.
Yeah, that's the you know, even that's the physique where like even when you're out of shape you can still do all that stuff, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, well, and I think, you know, at least from what I've observed from the software I bought, organ emulation keeps improving. There's like I on the recommendation of another organ player, Jim Alfredson out of Lansing, he, you know, he's like been endorsed by Hammond for years, and he's also knows how to fix and repair organs and Leslies, in addition to like, you know, programming synths and recording all these keyboards and stuff. But he did a review for IK Multimedia's Hammond B3X software.
Oh, okay.
And it's like it has the same level of like nerd attention that Keyscape does. Where like you can pick your virtual Leslie, like whichever model. You can like, you know, mess with the current, like how some Leslies, you know, they, depending on how much power, I guess, there's like a different color or character to the tone, mic placement, mic type, like in the virtual thing. You can just abandon a Leslie altogether and run it through like a Fender Twin emulator.
And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it really got me like, you know, looking at the presets too, there's like, you know, however many, like 50 or some to get you started, but they're all, you know, like you open them up and you can see like the image of the organ top down, and you can see like, oh, these drawbars are pushed in, this is on, this is off, like, and get an idea of Like, how did all those British invasion rockers use organs? Like, oh, kind of this tone. How do gospel musicians get that full sound? Oh, this kind of configuration.
Mm-hmm. So does that is that like something that you could like easily like use live? Like how would you mess with the drawbars? Like is it like a mouse thing, or is there some sort of MIDI controller that you're using for all those?
Yeah, so I actually did it last fall. This guitarist Kyle Green, who I guess he grew up in Michigan. He's friends with another drummer from Grand Rapids, Evan Fulmer. And Evan initially was like, hey, my friend Kyle's coming. He wants to do some shows. Can you make something happen? And at the time I was booking for Creston Brewery's series.
Mm-hmm.
And there happened to be like a couple open dates and like around the time he was going to come. I think, like November or October of last year. And so he's like, oh, I want to do the organ trio thing. And he sent over, some of his tunes he recorded with a trio, and then some covers. And I was like, okay, no better time than to test like how to do this. And I kind of like, I set it up to where I had a MIDI controller on top, and it had faders. So I mapped some of the like drawbar, like some of the drawbars and some of the like, like the percussion buttons. I guess.
Yeah.
I mapped it to faders, as well as like I think a couple of them were. One was like reverb and delay, like how much, and then I had another one that was just like it kicked on like, oh, it's like an Ibanez Tube Screamer emulation, and it just kicks it into overdrive for like a distorted, gritty sound. And so I had the top as kind of like, all right, I'm not going to be able to switch like how an organ has those black keys to switch the different like bass sounds or whatever. I couldn't do that with a 49 key controller unless I like octave down a couple times.
Yeah.
I just kept it at like the range I knew I was going to be at, and then just had a few that I knew I could like program. And then I just used my like this board for the lower keyboard for the, and then that let me use the lower notes to change sound.
Okay.
But at the time I didn't have that Leslie that I mentioned. Otherwise I would have tried it. I did use just a keyboard amp, and it surprisingly sounded like, since the amp kind of kicked out a lot of bass, it helped with like the lower end and having to be kind of a bass player. So it's definitely doable. The easiest way to like integrate it is if you have what is it, the HK, the XK, like there's two different like organ MIDI controllers that Hammond makes.
Oh, right.
And the software comes with profiles already installed, so all you have to do is like select the profile, and all the drawbars are mapped, all the buttons are mapped, all the keys are mapped, and that's like the easiest way if you have controllers. But I didn't, so I had to like MIDI learn like 20 some buttons, and then
I've actually been getting into a lot of like synthesizer stuff, just because like all the stuff that I'm doing now is so much more like synth driven, and I have the software that comes with like the Seaboard, like the Equator software, and I have Strobe too, and so I've been kind of messing around with those. And I mean, obviously I don't really have the Seaboard anymore, nor do I really want to use that so much, but it is a pretty cool software, and it's pretty user friendly. And I also just recently got the what is it? The Iris 2. It's like the RX, or not the RX. It's the Isotope. Synth.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a Black Friday sale, so I got a bunch of their plugins, and so I've been kind of messing around with that stuff, which has been fun.
Yeah. I think the last like keyboard, I mean, actually, one of them is connected right now. This setup is kind of like workstation mode, where I have my Yamaha's my main board, and then I have one of these like MIDI solutions splitter things, so I can like, with the Key Largo mixer, I can like, if I turn down the other channels, I can be like, okay, I'm playing, and then there's an effects loop, and I can add effects in or out, and but then same board, I can like control my microKORG, and then same board I can like access the sounds from the Moog. And it's great for like on the fly, just kind of being like, all right, change some stuff, play, try some effects, or like, blending some of the sounds, like what does a little bit of everything sound like?
Ooh, I like that.
Make weird textures. So
dang, you're gonna have to show me how to do all that, because that's super cool.
Yeah, when I first got introduced to MIDI, it was through I bought the first time I thought about it was I bought a Korg Karma years ago.
I used to have one of those. Yep.
Yeah, and my friend Isaac Norris sold it to me, and he's like a smooth jazz saxophone player, producer in Grand Rapids, and he was using it as kind of like a writing tool, and he sold it to me with a MIDI to USB converter, and I was like, oh, I didn't know you could like control computer stuff with like hardware. I thought it was all like just random. And now it's like, okay, MIDI is just, instead of sending audio signals, it's just data. Mm-hmm. So as much as you can like get in and really go crazy with like MIDI just removes all context. It's just numbers. Mm-hmm. So you could change all the context of like, I don't know what notes do certain things, or what sounds go with certain notes, or what parameters are changed, or what buttons. Like if I hit the buttons on the Yamaha, even though they're not mapped, it'll change the patch on the microKORG, or it'll change something on here.
What sort of software do you use to kind of map all that stuff?
Sometimes it's, I feel like each one has their own. So I don't do like 3-layer mapping yet. I might play around with it as an idea of like, okay, if I'm in Earth Radio, I could map a button to a song and then have the patches I need for that song just with the press of a button for all of my keyboards. But I know Yamaha. Yeah, I think it's Yamaha and Korg and Moog all have like software that you can connect your, the microKORG to the computer, and then open up the software, and it kind of shows you what's inside and what you can move around. I haven't gotten that deep yet, changing the insides, even though there are like factory reset things in case something goes wrong. But
right. Yeah, I've only ever used, well, at least especially in the past year, like I was going to kind of dive into all that stuff this year because I've had a lot of gigs lined up, crying times. But so I don't have a lot of like gear per se. A lot of it is just like software that I'm doing on my computer. So I don't have a whole lot of like stuff set up for live stuff. But when I did, what I basically used was just like main stage. And that, that's kind of user friendly because it has like the, kind of all the controls just like there. So you can just like, oh, I want to map this to this or this to this. But obviously it's just like one keyboard to one like patch. And I mean, you can have multiple patches that, and everything does a different thing, but I've only ever run like one keyboard through it. So
yeah, I saw a band that I don't really listen to, I think it was the Disco Biscuits. I saw his like, they do those like rig rundowns for guitar players, and they're like super nice shots, and they give them plenty of time, and they do close-ups of the gear, and then like all the keyboard ones, it's like, it could be as simple as like, oh, we have Larry Golding's at Madison Square Garden, but we only have 5 minutes and this guy's iPhone. Mm-hmm. And you can't hear anything over like the crew trying to get everything set up, and then they're like, how's your gear? And he's like, this is all rentals, but and but with the Disco Biscuits, he had like, like, think of like, stacks, and then like surrounding yourself on almost all sides with stacks. It was like, this is my like vintage keys and synth. This is my like, certain pads and triggers. This is the lead stuff. This is the clav. This is the organ. This is a Rhodes. Like they just had, like, he just had a ton of stuff, and it was all mapped through Ableton too. So he could like, have a click, but also have tracks, but also have, the triggers timed, and just a lot. It looked like, like 3 hours of setup for like a show. That's a lot. So that's, yeah, I don't know where, like, I would like to find some version of, I actually saw, when I first saw Nigel Hall play with Lettuce a few years ago in Grand Rapids at the intersection, he had like, I think he had like something for, digital sounds, like things he couldn't physically cart around, like, a clav, some different synth sounds, pads. And then he had like another keyboard on top for some other synth thing. And then he had kind of his main board at the bottom closest. But at the end of the show, he just like puts a lid on the whole thing and wheels it off stage.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
So easy.
Yeah. Speaking of live synth stuff, one thing that I saw on Facebook that is tentative, but supposedly a live concert in like June or July or something was Tigran. I saw you were interested on Facebook for it too. And I'm assuming it's his like new album that he released this year. And I'm very interested to see how he does all of that live, because there's a lot.
Yeah, there's so, like, I had tickets. This is going to be the year. This is going to be the year I'm going to see like a ton of music. And I had tickets to like Tigran in Chicago with the trio. Before I even knew, I think I had heard the one single.
Yeah.
And then I had tickets to see Jacob Collier's band. I had tickets to see Rage Against the Machine. I had tickets to see like, the Lewis Cole big band with my friends, Dan Dude.
Oh, man.
Just everything got either pushed or canceled, or like Jacob Collier did a round of like, I feel like he's one of the few people that could do it, but he put like a When This Happens tour pre-order, and he's just taking pre-orders for a tour that isn't scheduled yet, but he's listed like, here's all the cities that we were going to go to this year. We're going to go back to those cities.
Yeah, man, this is going to be like, every venue is going to be a scheduling nightmare once all of this is like normal again.
It's, I have a meeting tomorrow with Crooked Tree, because we haven't really done, like, we basically went into like not every man for themselves, but like a mode of like survival of like, okay, we literally can't do anything right now as a new, not only as a new like brand, I guess, but also as like just trying to coordinate the team when everyone's trying to make rent is like, it's hard to do.
man.
Can you send out a bunch of emails to places that might not even be open or might not have the same contact or
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a struggle for real.
Yeah, have you, because I've seen like, videos here and there with Last Gasp, and you have like new creative projects and things, and then you have like the remote teaching. How, like, were there any things that you did this year that were like, I don't know, a pleasant surprise among the chaos at all, or?
I mean, yeah. I mean, the thing about so I yes and no. Like, I joined Last Gasp in March or April, and so like I did a gig with them probably in like February or March, and then they asked me to join the band after that, and Jay had been, he'd told me like everything that was like there was this huge thing, like a bunch of stuff lined up for the summer. We were going to do like this week-long recording session in Toronto, and like, so there was like a lot of stuff that I was like, this is going to be awesome. And then obviously like pretty much every single thing got canceled, but we still recorded an album. And what we did was we went to Jay's parents' house in Marcellus, Michigan, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And it's like his parents live on a farm. But they rent out cabins and stuff. So we stayed there and we basically just recorded in this like multi-purpose room. And so we were there for like, I think it was maybe Labor Day weekend. No, it was in August. So it was before. But we went there for like an extended weekend, like 4 or 5 days. And, we like just jammed kind of the first couple days. And then, we kind of like, Jay would like kind of mix things and boil things down to like, okay, this is like the tune. And so, after that weekend, we, had an album worth of stuff, and it was really cool to see it come together. And, actually one thing that I've always known is that Jay Jackson is an incredible musician and human being, but seeing him work, was a whole nother thing. Cause like the first night we just had like a 2-hour-long jam session. And, we stayed up late, obviously. And then I woke up late the next morning and I went back into the multi-purpose room, and Jay had already been up and had already like mixed some songs together and like made a whole new song out of what we made. And it sounded really good. And I was like, oh shit, like this is killing. And so, so I have, I've always respected Jay, but now I have even more respect for him. And, he's just he's a hustler like all of us, but yeah, so, some of the silver linings were, we have this album that's now coming out, which, obviously it's different than what we would have recorded in the summer, but, it's killing. And everyone kind of does a little bit of everything on it too. So that's kind of cool. And also, obviously Fake Baseball is, we're kind of in the process of recording an album, and, that kind of started as a capstone project for Maggie. And then it sort of just evolved into like a more serious thing. And so, despite my world kind of being destroyed in many ways, I feel like it provided the opportunity to like really spend like, I would have been so busy this summer and Fake Baseball might not have even been a thing for me, just because I would have been so busy and not really had time to devote to it. So, silver linings is now that's a big part of my life too. And it's been really cool. And it's sort of a new thing that I'm not really, I'm more used to the jazz and R&B side of things. And so this sort of more pop-ish genre stuff is, it's a new endeavor for me, and it's been really cool. And it's been really cool to work with. I've worked with Jared before. I've worked with Maggie before. I'd never even met Adam before. So that it's been really cool to kind of, I guess that's sort of the silver lining of all of it.
Yeah. I feel like it, this year kind of showed who wants to like when everything's kind of leveled to like, all right, like there's more time open, there's more, like if there was ever a person that you're like, oh, I want to reach out to them about something, I want to, see what's going on, or like I want to work with them on something. That's, I've seen those people who, like I've tracked little snippets and full takes of things for a lot of stuff this year. And that was one of my goals going into this year, was to like record more. Cause I felt like last year I was on a couple things, but it was mostly like, live in studio type stuff. So it'd be like, okay, I got on like 3 or 4 singles, and then the New Earth Radio record that was last year. And then this year it was like, okay, I'm on, like a couple singer-songwriters from Kalamazoo, and like a guy, I just did some jazz stuff for a guy I follow in the metal music community. Wanted to do like a more stripped down, like traditional thing. But I remember like I was talking with him, I'm like, I actually did it this time. It wasn't like, like 7 years ago when I had like a cracked version of Ableton and like no idea what I was doing.
Right. Yeah.
So that's been nice. And I actually still, there's a couple loose ends I need to tie up before the end of the year in terms of like who asked me to do some things, and just kind of, I feel like being so spread out and not being able to schedule like in-person stuff too. It's kind of forced my hand of being like, all right, you can still do things, but you just need to like get more organized than with, your time and like figuring out gear. Like even today, like the only way I'm using my iPhone right now as a camera with Zoom is because I yesterday did just a quick search of like, how do I use my phone as a webcam? And there's an app that Elgato sells called Epic Cam, and it's like $8, and all you do is download the app, and then you download the drivers to your computer, and then it just worked.
That's awesome.
And before I had been using, OBS has a camera app that works great too, but it only works with OBS. And now it's like, okay, Epic Cam could be a source for any, I could use it as a webcam for anything. So yeah,
that's cool.
Figuring out things.
Yeah. I always like, you're always doing something, and I like to kind of follow you, and I'm always like, every now and then I'm like, okay, well, what is Dutcher up to now? Like, and now you're doing this whole series, and obviously you're trying to get the whole like kind of get a bunch of keyboards together and make a song together somehow or some way. So you're always doing something, and I admire that about you.
Thanks. I feel like it's I like collaborating, but I also, the people that I really like, I look at them like, these guys seem to know what they're doing, and they do, they're not bound necessarily by like one category, I guess. Like even in a little sense of like, what's his name? He is Emmett, jazz pianist.
Emmett Cohen?
Yes, Cohen. Emmett Cohen. He, like, on paper, jazz. Like, sounds like jazz, plays jazz, jazz musicians, New York jazz, jazz crews, jazz. But then for him to, see the, the response he would get on the road with audiences, and then go, like, really into the live streaming aspect, and like figuring out a way to get a trio in pretty consistently, get guests in, figure out a system, and it sounds great. And he's still probably he's probably done he's done less shows in terms of like what he would have done touring, but he's done a ton more shows than you would have thought with someone whose whole year probably got canceled.
Yeah. I actually recently just watched the other day or week, his trio played, and he had a guest as Warren Wolf, and they played that Dizzy Gillespie tune Bebop, and they played it so fast, and they both just shredded so hard.
Because it's like, these people who they might look as like, okay, jazz, to see these other things that they're adapting to, so they're working at it is really cool.
And I think you just have to be now. Like, you can't just be like, you can't just be a really good jazz pianist anymore. You have to know how to market yourself, get into the live streams things. And it's so much, you can't, I mean, you can be really good and just, if you're really, but even Jacob Collier, someone like him, like, he does literally everything, and he's really good at everything that he does, which, is probably why he's so famous for all of it. But,
right.
If Oscar Peterson were alive today, I don't really think anybody would even, besides the jazz world, I don't think anybody would really know who he is, just because, if he didn't do all the, live stream and promoting himself, and it's, because the record industry isn't really for jazz, isn't it? The record industry isn't here's this new album by Oscar Peterson, and we're selling it, we're playing it on the radio. Radio's kind of dead. And so, it's just a different world.
Yeah. Well, and it also, it would be interesting to take some of these people, if you put a Miles Davis now, I'm sure he could figure something out. I'm
sure Miles Davis would be destroying everything. The moment streaming and all this self-promotion stuff took off, I'm sure Miles would have done something to just totally shake up the industry.
Yeah.
He would probably have his own streaming platform where he just pays musicians,
Yeah. Well, and because I'd like to think that it's interesting with someone like Oscar Peterson, because he's so obviously amazing, but it's hard to say how would he adapt to social media. It's well, if he grew up in it, it'd be different. But if he was in his 50s now with a whole year of canceled dates, not all these dudes that are legacy artists, that they have those mechanisms already in place of someone being okay, well, we can't go on the road, let's do merch drops all year, and then make some money on that to pad our losses. Or oh, you can't meet in person, let's do virtual clinics, we'll set that all up for you.
Yeah.
And I don't really know Oscar Peterson's team, I guess, who came to every show. I'm sure some manager, and maybe, I don't know. And the environment too for shows was so much different than it is nowadays. Even pre-COVID, the weird dance you have to play with trying to have a show booked and then trying to promote a show, and then having investment from the venue versus what you can put in versus what you can put out in physical stuff versus the internet versus it's it's a completely different industry and world. And so it's hard to even make that kind of have these theoreticals, because it's there is no possible way to know. Because maybe Oscar Peterson, if he grew up now, he'd be like a Justin Schultz and just live on Instagram until he had to go on tour. Right. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. And what would happen if Charlie Parker existed now and bebop was created now? What would happen if that that's a weird thought experiment. Yeah. Then it would it'd beg the question of okay, then what did blues just stay stagnant for that long until blues and early jazz stayed stagnant that long, or was there a development differently? It'd be an interesting I don't know. It's even wild to think of what if all these genius of musicians had even just lived longer, Bird, Train,
Even Miles, but like what would they be doing, if they were still alive?
Yeah. I feel like Coltrane would like, there might be a point since there's the relation to Flying Lotus. It's like he could keep going with the like exploring the jazz vocabulary and exploring the saxophone, but then get into like more electronic stuff, and he could just end up on Brain Feeder as like kind of like how Parliament Funkadelic is on. I think they're on Brain Feeder.
I think they are. I mean, even Herbie, he's on some Brain Feeder stuff. He's kind of he's doing the whole Terrace Martin thing, and so every now and then
it's like seeing and Herbie's a great example of like seeing what's going on and knowing that he has the vocabulary to contribute and just wanting, like, showing up to like Glasper recording something, and then they're like, Herbie's here, play something.
Right.
And recognizing like it's a mix of like he knows the work he's put in, but then he also knows that he's going to keep learning by showing up to like these younger dudes. Even Robert Glasper's not that much younger, but like the younger generation of musicians coming up. Like I don't know if he'd be like, it's like, a trap artist wants some Herbie licks. It's like, okay, but who's making that genre? Like is it someone who can use it in a cool way, or is it someone who's just like got their portfolio of beats and they haven't gone through all 200 of them yet and they're just trying to make songs?
Yeah I don't know.
It's and I feel like too, as keyboard players, we have a little bit more utility in how to diversify what we do than a lot of artists. I see some people lean kind of hard into the fact that like they, on social media or whatever, they're like, I'm the, I play this instrument and that's my identity. I'm this instrument guy in this part of the community. But keyboard players are kind of like, they kind of jump around of like what sounds we're making, what styles we're playing, what things we're, I think presentation's a little different for, I mean, there's some people like Noah Kelman who like is very much like jazz piano, but I'll also do like 20 neo soul licks, 25 bebop runs. Like, he just makes these like educator packages, and then he'll have these like, he'll make a reel on Instagram that's like a micro jam, and he's like vibing on 4 chords. And it's like, okay, he's the piano dude, but even then it's like, I don't know, we have a little more opportunity to take, like, even though we said earlier, like, synths, organs, keys, all different, we can still like at least play notes on them.
Right. Yeah.
And figure it out from there to some degree.
Yeah. One of the things that I've struggled with is I'm like I'm introverted and I'm extroverted, but I'm introverted in the sense that like, I don't like I just want to play with people, but I hate like the reaching out to people and they're like, oh, like, let's collab and do this stuff and this stuff. Like, I hate that aspect, but I just want to be like, I just want people to send me stuff, or I want me to send people stuff. I don't want any words exchanged. I just want the music to just kind of flow back and forth. Right. And it's so hard to like do that. You can't just not talk to someone, but that's just a me thing. So.
Well, and that's one thing I've seen about, because I recently joined TikTok because I was like, what is this thing? I've seen all the jokes, and then right away I was kind of introduced to the strange, because it's just like this endless scroll that you can, it almost like keeps track of like, okay, you're following these 12 people and you've seen like these like in terms of dates, like you've seen all their November hits in your scroll. So we're going to start showing you older ones. So there's always something to see, which is like weird when like Instagram is like, you know, this might have been yesterday. It might have been 2 weeks ago, but we might show it to you next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other thing, you know, I saw my friend Shelby. She's a music teacher in Ohio. I met her at NAMM. She kind of tagged along with all the Michigan folks that went. And she's really good at, you know, being, since she has to be kind of like expressive and, you know, happy and engaging as teaching younger kids. She's really good at TikTok because it kind of rewards that sort of, you know, like you're happy, but there's also text. Maybe you're singing lyrics, or there's like a little like story time thing or whatever. And she's kind of endearing as a, you know, as a teacher, but also to someone in that age group that she would teach anyway. And then I see like a student I had at Allendale High School. I knew she was into like cosplay because she would, you know, come, even if it wasn't full decked out cosplay, it'd be like, okay, that looks like an anime. That looks, that's an anime of something. And so she does a lot of like cosplaying, lip dub related things or like dance related things. And she's got like 210,000 followers.
Oh, geez.
And I'm like, this thing literally you just do a thing and then something, like I did it just almost as a joke. I took a video I had put on my Instagram where it was just me playing with my dog. And all I did on TikTok is I added a filter and I put a song that I just typed in dogs playing, and there was a song that was called like Dogs at Play or whatever. And I just put it on it because I guess TikTok also tracks what songs are being used.
Yeah.
So that has like 1,300 plays almost.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, just me and a dog.
Yeah. That's funny.
The one, I guess, to speak to when you're saying like not wanting to reach out and collab, you just want music to happen. The duet function on TikTok is cool. I like that it just you toggle it, or you go to share the video and you select duet, and then it sets up like there's your side, there's their side, record, and then you can just record whether it's with your headphones or through an interface or whatever, and just line it up. Or you can do it after the fact, like you can download a video from TikTok and then set up your own duet and then put.
Interesting.
So I might be doing. There's Louis Cato's on TikTok, and he does all those cool, like him playing 6 instruments and singing harmonies and stuff. And he did. I think he just did The Big Payback, like a James Brown cover, like super solid. And then you see it on Instagram, it's got like 20-some thousand views, and then on TikTok it's like 200. Like nobody knows who he is yet on TikTok.
Man.
So it's so funny to like, the way I've been kind of working on, playing more piano and, playing around with gear, just trying to like not think too hard about it and just like kind of go like, oh, I want to transcribe this like Salami Rose Joe Louis thing, and it was tricky, but I figured it out, and it wasn't perfect, but I still put it out with like a filter, and it's like someone's gonna like it. Like, okay, next, like just keep going, and then eventually I'll be like, wow, I'm better at it than I was a year ago. But I don't blame you for like not wanting to.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been kind of lucky because people I know have kind of just been reaching out to me and be like, hey, can you send me something for this? And I've actually had to do a lot of like, accompanying for like jazz vocalists and stuff. So I've had to do a lot of that, which has taken up a lot of my time, more so than I think I want. But, at least I'm making music, and that's kind of what I keep telling myself is like, at least I'm out here making music, and that's what's important to me. So, but I've also been, I live with two drummers. And so I started shedding, some like different polyrhythm stuff, just like basically different groupings over five. So like 2 against 5, 3 against 5, 4 against 5, and just like trying to be able to go through those seamlessly and just to have the hand independence. And so, obviously living with two drummers, we all kind of nerd out, and we're talking about like, how do these line up? And, it's just kind of funny. And it's funny you mentioned TikTok, because I actually found, I don't have a TikTok, but someone showed me a TikTok the other day of like this guy, just like speaking different, polyrhythms, like 1 cup of tea, that sort of thing. And he just like would rapid fire. It was like 2 against 3, 3 against 4, 2 against 5, 3 against 5, 4 against 5, something against, it was just like rapid fire. It was just like a song almost.
Yeah.
And so it was just, I was like, whoa, that's on TikTok.
Whoa. Yeah. TikTok I know, like I went into it knowing that like, I don't know. I mean, I'd go into most platforms not really knowing my audience, other than like, music nerds, maybe keyboard players, maybe, I don't know, people who just are fans of music in general, but are like, it's more regional. Like I don't have like too many people reaching out in like another planet or country or,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I feel like like actually a good example, this guy, I knew he was going to blow up because he did the thing that is fun to do on YouTube. He made a video called like this is how church drummers are or something, like the church drummer,
how they enter the room.
Yeah,
that one.
How they enter the room, how they're like, like there's the old school dude with, like he's laid back and it's like very slow, churchy swing, and like, or like not a shuffle, but like an old, slower church, and he's kind of like not asleep, but just kind of like super relaxed, and and then there's like the shout chopper, and it's just like always playing something. And then, but all he did was he had tracks of different recorded music, and then he would sometimes overdub like his voice being like the church audience, and then all of his backgrounds were either his apartment or like Zoom virtual backgrounds. But now that video has 1 million plays now, and I'm like, okay, he did the thing, and he didn't really think about it a lot. Like, it wasn't like, oh man, I need to actually learn how to play. Like, it's more authentic if I can play the drums. Like, no, he just had sticks. And he just had a couple outfits that, is really just a change of clothes. And so I feel like there's part of the reason I've started doing like, just like put something out, who cares, is because you never know who's going to latch onto what. And there's so many people on YouTube, especially that they make their empires are just like, they're funny enough to like speak to certain topics in a funny way or like an engaging way. They have enough editing skills, or they work with an editor to like help their points. And then it's not a studio. It's just like, okay, they have a computer that can run stuff decently for streams or whatever if they need to do live. And they have a camera or maybe a couple cameras. And then they just talk.
What's interesting, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, is sort of, it's like that whole like social media, like almost clickbait thing, because in a way, having all this access is great because, people who never would have seen you before are going to see you, and you're going to see people who you never would have seen before. And that's great. but it's also like, and this is the thing I struggle with is like, you know, because I'm even guilty of this, is like when I'm on Instagram, you know, I don't want to watch a whole song, you know, like, and I'm just going to keep scrolling. And so it's just like, I feel so guilty. I'm like, this is like someone put their heart and soul into this, and this is art. And like, it sounds good, but you know, it just like the dopamine thing is like, okay, well, I'm done with this. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. I might like it, you know? And it's just like the doom scrolling. And it's like, it's, you know, like I said, it's good because, you know, you're going to see people that you know, you might find someone you like, or people might find you, but then it's like, you know, how much of what you're making is actually being heard, or, you know, how much are you listening even? Like, cause like I said, like I'm guilty, like especially on Instagram, like I'm going to keep scrolling. I'm not going to listen to a whole thing on Instagram unless I'm really invested in that band or that person or, you know, whatever. So it's a weird little paradox.
Yeah. And you know, I'm feeling like there's definitely like, you know, little tricks of like, okay, if you want stuff that gets more viewed on Instagram, it's got to be like a minute or less, because then Instagram doesn't cut it off and you get bored.
Right.
I was chatting with a friend who I need to, you know, we're gonna have some follow-up meetings, and he wants to start doing more collaborative stuff. But the one thing I forgot to mention to him was like, hey man, like the things you're making are great for like Facebook and YouTube, you know, maybe YouTube with a little bit of editing, but for sure Facebook, like you can't have Instagram, you know, like a 6-minute video on Instagram and then have up until the cutoff point be like an introduction. It's like, hello, I'm going to play some jazz music for you, and today it's like, okay, like even if I want to watch it, it's like my brain's already like, I guess it's done. It's
exactly over. Yeah. So it's hard.
Yeah, and especially with, you know, good old Gary V, good old omnipresent Gary V, somehow omnipresent. He, I typed in like, you know, tips for social media promotion or something, and because I'm like, for piano videos, I want to be able to cover a whole song. I want to be able to do like a multicam thing where it's like an overhead shot, side shot, like get to the point where I have more involved things. And he has the kind of reverse pyramid, I guess. Like some people try to do, you know, start with the smaller form and then they try to entice people with the longer form afterward. But he's saying start with the longer form. Like if you got a podcast, if you have a video, if you have a, you know, something that's substantial, that's also a moment to be like, okay, I have this podcast. I'll clip out this nugget as promo. I'll clip out these things for Instagram or Facebook or whatever. So then it's like, okay, I'm making the thing I want to make first. And then you start figuring out how I want to like push it out to people. Especially with like no money to like do any promotion.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. And yeah, I am definitely I'm figuring out like what I want to get out of the platforms too, and not so much like numbers, but like how I want my creative rhythm, I guess, to be expressed on the platform, or on a platform. But I know I'm not going to touch certain ones like Twitter. I'm just like non-existent on. It'd be kind of fun to like do like quips and one-liners or observations, little things that sometimes I type into Facebook and I'm like, no.
Probably shouldn't say that.
Yeah. Like, I don't need to fight with someone in today. I don't need to fight. I don't need some like dude just stumbling in from who knows where yelling at me.
Right.
I even had like, I remember I had a post. It was just a joke of like this lady who, you know, she had some recording, a talent search thing years ago. She was singing a Jennifer Hudson song that you need the range, you need the support. And she had like if you were to take away the audio, you're like, okay, she's got the outfit, she's got the face, she's got the movements. You turn on the audio, it's like she can't go above this note, and she's just like hitting that ceiling repeatedly, trying to like where's the note? You have the volume, but where's the note? And my caption was like, it was like when you ask someone to play for free at the local bar, and all the musicians got the joke. They were like, "Oh, this is funny." Like, it's like, wow, she's something. And someone who like barely knew me had seen me on like one live stream where I played like kind of meditative Rhodes music with effects and loops and stuff. He was very upset.
Really?
He's like, first he said, he's like, some of these people who, they have better, they're more engaging and fun to watch than the masters. And I'm like, and then I made the thing of like, okay, yeah, if I'm like gonna play at Jim's Crab Shack, like, and Sheila knows Jim intimately, like Sheila's gonna get the gig before me, like that's just a fact. It's not gonna cost, like, everyone likes Sheila, nobody cares about me yet. I haven't endeared myself to the Jim's Crab Shack universe, and so I made that observation, and then he took it as if I was like, just a blanket hate for another human being's artistic output. And I'm like, you don't get it if you haven't been in, like,
right.
I turned 28 this year, so I've been playing piano for like 20 years. That's like longer than most people's marriages at my age, relationships, school commitments, anything.
It's like the most consistent thing in our lives,
Yeah, it's like you can't just assume anything or like, pretend to speak for like how I should feel about all music kind. But it was also a reminder of like, okay, nobody's gonna, I'm not looking to win everybody over. Right.
You have to accept that that's not possible,
Yeah, it's impossible. There's no way.
You could post, I think people deserve rights on Facebook, and you'd probably start something.
Yeah, like what, like Antifa? Like, no, did I say that at all? No. Like, what are you talking about?
Oh man,
it's yeah, and I feel like too, being like keyboardists are like utility musicians in a way. Like we can kind of just like, you're an accompanist, you're a band member, you're a solo artist, you're a arranger, you're a composer, you're like, we're just from playing our instrument, we have
so many necessary skills,
Yeah, we have stuff that, we kind of have instead of like, learning a monophonic instrument and then getting to the point where it's like, okay, you understand harmony with your monophonic instrument, but let's bring it up to understanding how to think of voice leading and arranging, and then we learn that inherently from just playing music on the piano.
Right.
So I feel like there's those moments we have as keyboard players, just seeing, like, just kind of sitting there and being like, nobody knows I'm about to save the day. And I'm just gotta smile and look at me go. And
Yep. I've been in that situation.
Yeah, it's definitely like, well, it only helps overall, but there's a lot of like those stories of like, yeah, this person like just got nervous and this happened, you kind of have to go with them, or like this person skipped ahead and you kind of got to find them, or this person like said it was in one key, doesn't really understand keys. Now you have to transpose on the fly. And
yeah. And it's interesting because, you know, in that sort of situation where, you know, you do have to adapt. If you don't, it seems like you're the one who's wrong, even though it's probably not your fault.
Yeah.
But then, you know, when you do, it's like, oh, they're singing it in a different key, or, oh, they're playing it in a different key, or, oh, they jumped to this section. It's like, you just got to do it and no one will ever know that you did that, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like that's why, you know, I always try to show people Kayvon Carter on Instagram, because he's so good at like, to the non-music educated person who just likes music or likes personality, they're like, oh, this guy's this funny, goofy dude. He's having fun with this, like, oh, this lady's singing at a basketball game. But then all the music nerds are like, this guy is taking a total disaster and turning it into something that's like...
Right. His videos are also just so funny.
Yeah. Just always, like... somehow always finding, like, these great videos to be in an accompanist role, like, because you just feel that energy of like, all right, I guess we're going here now, and now we're back down here.
Yep. Yeah, accompanying is that's a whole thing.
Yeah, I feel like I did a ton more of it in my undergrad than I did at Western. But Grand Valley had me like, that first year I was started, I think some of the first people I was accompanying were saxophones. And that was like, I had no idea that the repertoire would be that difficult. I'm thinking like, oh, accompany, like solo ensemble. And it's like, I think I like the Creston Concerto, where it's all like, you know, the most unnecessary ways to write notes. Like, instead of C major, it's B sharp major, and you're reading like double sharps.
Yeah.
It's just kind of mind bending a little bit.
Yeah. I will say though, accompanying has sharpened my sight reading abilities, but also just like sharpened my guessing abilities. Specifically, like when you're reading something in B sharp, or, you know, it's just like, I can't actually sight read this, but I can kind of infer from context clues what the harmony should be. And even if it's not the right harmony, I can make it sound like it's not wrong. So that, you know, I kind of attribute a lot of that to accompanying, you know?
Yeah. And it's so apparent too. And like, 'cause, you know, I remember the point being at Grand Valley, doing a ton of accompanying, like, because all saxophones have such a limited repertoire that's like required learning for development. And if you're an accompanist that can play that music, you're going to get a lot of work, because it's, you know, like, oh, you learned the Days-and-Clo. Like, all these people are doing the Days-and-Clo. You're doing the Creston Sonata, Creston Concerto, Muchinsky, you know, all these like French dudes that wrote really hard sax music. The Klonos piece, just, yeah, stuff that is, because I guess like the oldest sax music, other than like someone took a cello suite and put it to saxophone or something, is like Saint-Gelais, and that's, you know, still not that old. It sounds more classical, but saxophone wasn't really used in a classical context for years until people were like, this actually sounds cool in chamber music or something.
Yeah. You know, and with the, you know, as much as we have horror stories of accompanying, it's actually very fun and very rewarding a lot of times. Specifically for me, I love accompanying, like jazz vocalists, particularly ones who like know what they want or what they're doing. Cause then it's just like, oh, okay, like we're making art together, and it's, you know, you're letting me, you know, obviously they might be like, oh, I want this or I want this, but, you know, obviously, you know, most of the time they're not pianists. And so they're like, just do your thing. And so some of the coolest arrangements that I've ever written are actually like vocal piano duo stuff. So that's kind of fun too.
Yeah. And there's something about, I've had those moments with like, especially the saxophone studio at Grand Valley they compete a lot and they go to a lot of conferences. So to have those moments where like, oh, we're doing the Arthur C. Hills scholarship competition, and I helped my friend Lisa win $5,000, and I got like a bunch of, the judges weren't just like great saxophone. They're like, this only worked because he did great and you did great. But in terms of like jazz, I was reminded of what's the pianist's name? He plays with Cecily McLaurin Salvant.
Sullivan Fortner or Aaron Deal?
I think it's Sylvan.
Okay. Sullivan.
Yeah, that sounds right. He's like she already like has the character and storytelling and all that in her voice, and then he just finds these cool ways to like embellish the mood or the context.
That duo record that they did is like probably in my top 10 all-time favorite records now. Like, it's just so, everything he does is so I mean, both of them, but like as an accompanist, like what he does is so tasteful. And then he like plays organ and piano on some of them. And I'm just like, oh, it goes like that. And yeah, he's one of my like current favorite pianists. I just love the voice that he has on the piano.
Yeah, it's very, it's that thing where it's, sometimes as accompanists, we sit kind of in the back and like let the person out in front shine and like support them. But then with that, it's like they're both kind of just feeding into each other's like artistry. Mm-hmm. It feels like Cecily will, have these great phrasing moments and note choices, and then he'll just have the great response or yeah.
Yeah. He knows exactly what to play and when to play it.
Yeah. I would like to, get back into more accompanying when things are normal, but, yeah,
it's definitely hard to do it virtually, because then it's like, okay, well, one person records their part, the other person records it, and then it's like you're not even doing it together,
Right. And you're like trying to, I don't know. It doesn't feel as authentic as being in the room and enjoying company and all that stuff.
Yeah, I actually did a downbeat recording session at La Luna on Sunday, and it was like the first time that I had played jazz with people in like a few months, and it was just, oh man, it felt so good.
Yeah, that I get a little bit of I actually have two gigs I'm sneaking in before the end of the year. One is like I play an hour. I think it's me, Caleb, and Nuri. We're just doing like whatever as a trio. And then the end of the month, I don't know if you've seen any of the or heard of Brooklyn Cole at all.
I don't think so.
I kind of found out about her through she's from Utah, and that's Evan Taylor, the trumpet player. They kind of rhymed. Went to Utah for his master's, and they met up and worked together on a few things. And she visited back in February and did some shows with, I think I was asked to be on it, but I couldn't because I was playing the musical in Ludington at the West Shore Community College during the dates that they would have done some shows. But she's coming back for a little bit, like a couple weeks. I don't know if she has family out here, if she's just hanging out, or what it is. But we're gonna, do some writing, and then there's a show on January 1st that's kind of like we have a couple sets that we're preparing, but it's like a live stream with a yoga studio type thing.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
People who I think are already doing, remote yoga sessions through this group, and now it's like music.
That's a cool idea.
But yeah, so I get to sneak in, and I just got hit up. Mark Lavengood wants to do a New Year's Eve stream, so it'll work out perfect.
Nice.
To just sneak in like a couple gigs
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the year. And,
Very cool.
Yeah, because otherwise I'd probably be not anywhere close to the studio too. I'd be out playing and
Yep. I would not have spent this much time in my room, that's for sure.
Yeah. But I think, we covered a lot of ground, and I feel like we could always talk more about pianists and piano and all the things. But I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the time has gone by, hasn't it?
Yeah, and again, thanks for being the first guinea pig.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is I can't wait to hear all the other ones.
You mentioned some of your groups, some of the things. Where can people find what you do, who you are, all that good stuff?
Well, I actually recently just made my own website, graysonnye.com. So there'll be links to everything I'm doing there, but Last Gasp has their own website and Facebook. Fake Baseball has a Facebook and a Bandcamp. So if you just go to pretty much Facebook, you can find links to everything now. And both of those groups are going to be, releasing albums within the next probably month or two. Well, Fake Baseballs will probably be a little bit more, but the Last Gasp one is almost done, so that'll probably be coming out soon. So I guess people have that to look forward to coming up.
Nice. Yeah, and if if you're digging what you're hearing, audience people, you can support this podcast over on my Patreon, patreon.com/Dutcher Snedeker. You can find links to whatever I do, and you can check out other episodes from other podcasts and all that good stuff. Go check it out if you want. Thanks again, Grayson, and we'll see all you piano fans next time.